Hello, in this lesson, we're going to go over what the SDLC and its methodologies are. So, SDLC stands for Software Development Life Cycle. Basically, this is the life cycle of the app or the software or website that they're building, and you are part of the cycle. And there are a lot of methodologies that companies use for this. So, I'm going to go over the most popular ones. And believe it or not, these are actually pretty important because you will see jobs that ask for this. They will say they're looking for a software tester that's familiar with the waterfall model, or they want someone familiar with Agile model or Kanban model. So, at the very least, you should know what these methodologies are and how they work. So, let me explain them to you. So, the waterfall model is very linear, as the name says, sequential approach. It falls in the waterfall way, meaning step by step approach. What that means is at the very beginning, everybody sits down, they get all the requirements together, they figure out how the software has to work, and then they also figure out the design, the buttons, the colors, right, the brands, how all the looks that's finished, and then they go on to development stage where the developers code it and they build it and they finish it as it's supposed to look complete, and then it goes into the testing phase. So it's a little bit longer of a testing phase because you have a whole website to check and then they have to fix all that before they can release it. But that's basically the waterfall model. The agile model is different because you have incremental development and continuous feedback, meaning they go on a step by step process. For example, they'll say to this week we're going to work on the login. So then the developers just figure out the login, login and password, and when that's done, you get to test just that part. And then based on your feedback or on the defects, they fix that. Um, then they will fix it and release it, and then they will go on to the next step. But they will not continue on to the next section of the website or whatever they're building until that first part is complete. And usually they do this in sprints, um, which is 1 to 2 weeks. Most companies do 2 weeks, which means every other Friday whatever they said had to be done has to be complete by that Friday so that they can start on the next phase. If it's not complete now, they're going to be running a little bit behind and they're going to push that section into the next sprint. Um, so that's the agile model, and that's usually one of the most common ones. Most companies use the agile model. Scrums is basically the agile framework, and it works on short sprints with daily stand-ups and team collaboration, meaning if your team does scrum, they're going to meet every morning and you're going to have to say what you worked on the day before and what you're going to work on that day, and you're kind of sticking to your word. If you say this is what I'm going to work on today, that's what you have to finish that day. And then if you have any blockers or any problems, you got the team right there to help you. So scrum is very helpful because you get to meet with your team every single morning at the same time and tell them um, where you're at and if you have any problems at all. And they'll address it. The Kanban model is basically the same as Agile but very visual. So it's a little old school, but it works. I've done a couple Kanban models before. Basically, there's a big board and there are post-it notes where people will have usually columns, and they'll have the to do column, the in progress column, and the done column. And everybody gets, a bunch of tasks assigned to them. And wherever you're at, you get to move it, whether to in progress or done. And it's very visual, so you get to see what everybody's working on. The V model, validation and verification, is testing plans parallel to development. And imagine an actual V. On one side, you have the development phase, and on the other side, you have the validation phase. So basically, as the developers are coding something from the website, then the testers get to test that part. And then when they finish and they put, let's say, two features together, then you do what's called integration testing, where you test those two features together and see if they work. So It's basically they go down parallel, but in a V shape, and it gets done pretty continuously because you get that feedback right away. Okay, so those are the most popular ones, and then the not so popular methodologies are spiral model. Sorry, my little camera there's blocking the slide. The Big Bang model and the DevOps model. So the spiral model is they take risk into account very seriously. So the process basically moves through repeating cycles, and each loop is a new version of the software. So as they go, imagine they're creating a game. The first version of the game will have no graphics whatsoever, and maybe it's very slow and it's very like in I don't know, alpha version. And as you give them feedback and find out what doesn't work, then it goes into the next version where they'll add graphics and they'll add color, and maybe they'll improve a little bit of the functionality. So basically, every loop in the spiral is a new version of the software. Okay, you're not testing the same thing. It's like very basic, the skeleton, and then it's got the skin, and then it's got, the final fixes. Big Bang model has no formal planning. Everything is developed spontaneously. Nobody uses that, so you don't have to remember. DevOps model focuses on continuous integration and continuous deployment. That is very popular as well. Not as much as Agile, but I have seen where some jobs, where say on the job description, we're looking for a tester that's familiar with CI/CD. So that's what they say more than the actual DevOps model terminology. They'll say CI/CD, and it's very familiar to Agile. So once you know the Agile model, you basically know CI/CD. The only difference is there's no time constraints with the sprints. So out of those methodologies, the three that you have to remember the most are Agile, Scrum, and DevOps or CI/CD. Those are the ones that you're going to see almost in every job out there. They're going to say, we want a tester that's familiar with Agile, Scrum, or CI/CD.